I am really, really excited to announce Nick. He is a fantastic, utilizer of Litify and streamlining systems and operations, just doing some really incredible stuff. I'll let him talk about it, but some of the growth that they've seen through what they've been able to leverage with Litify has just been really fantastic. So I don't want to take up his time. Give it up for Nick.
Am I good to take 45 minutes? Clock. All right. Just to give you guys a little bit of a forewarning, I'm kind of an off-the-cuff kind of person, so don't judge me. But so I kind of wanted to start off with a show of hands to kind of see where everybody kind of is in their own little Litify journey. We're 2 years in. We've been doing some pretty cool things, especially the course of the last 17-ish, 18-ish months. We've been really making big strides. So show of hands, how many of you are already live on Litify? All right, great. So show of hands, how many of you are already live on Litify and have been live for over a year? Great. So we can get into the nitty-gritty crazy stuff. So I can show you some of my little bit of man scientist abilities. So we'll get into it. I guess this is their marketing piece, for finding out if this is a good session or not. So go ahead and rate it. There'll be another slide at the end about this as well. So we'll blow past this one. So scaling for success. The biggest thing that we really kind of wanted to center this entire presentation around is how we're able to really take our people and see what we can do with Litify and see what Litify can show us about our individuals. Everybody wants to have the all-knowing power of looking at data and being able to see what is working for some folks versus what is not working for other folks, and how to manage that and how to identify those things. So we're going to get into it. So the scaling process that we've kind of come up with that's really worked for us at Litify, or not at Litify, at Race Brown Riley, we do 4 steps essentially. So we integrate and we automate. A lot of the different things that we really focus on are making sure that people are doing their tasks, getting taken care of, making sure that they're focusing solely on their duties. And I've always said this with a lot of my team members is like, I don't need a whole team of superheroes. I just need soldiers that want to do their job and do their job incredibly well to a T. And that's what we kind of focus on, is trying to build KPIs that want to show us who those soldiers are, that want to be, that want to take care of the clients, that want to make sure that their clients are covered when they sign cases, versus our marketing data and being able to drill down into that information to see, okay, why is this campaign working versus this campaign? Those are super important things for us to be able to have integrated, and we'll get more into that. Leveraging, obviously you need to map the road. The biggest thing is, once you're along that road, make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to make that road go down the right path. Every time that you come to a fork in the road, go down the right way, and use that data to leverage, do you go left or right? If any of you have played Oregon Trail or some of those old games, do you go left, right? It's kind of what leveraging is all about. So, and then accounting for that information. Are you making sure that these people aren't just working to what the dashboard wants to show? Are you making sure that these people are actually doing what they say that they're doing and what the dashboards are saying that they're doing, rather than cheating the system? You got to make sure that we're finding those right things, and then repeat everything. Build another layer on top of that. Once you build a really, really good foundation for the focused things that you want to care about, and move forward with that. So we'll get into the integrate and automate anything and everything. Not that dramatically, actually. We've done a lot of different things to integrate as many things as we possibly can. We're currently going through a process to integrate all of our accounting data. When we first launched with Litify, we didn't think that it was that important, but as we continue to scale, it's become a massive headache to deal with QuickBooks Enterprise, so we're currently working on that. But the main key pieces that I kind of want to discuss is our intake and marketing that we focus on a lot more than a lot of other departments right now, because without that, we don't have the cases and the inventory to keep other people working. So the main reason why I like to integrate and automate, application overload. Show of hands, how many people have 4 different screens and you have a million different applications that you guys utilize for phone calls, ads, all these other things with Google reviews, all these other things with Litify, as well as your QuickBooks data, as well as all these other things. Show of hands. How many of you have more than 3? It gets to be a pain in the ass, right? Excuse my French, but I got really tired of having to go to multiple different areas, build out multiple different dashboards, and things that aren't necessarily as robust as Salesforce's reports and dashboards. So having that data all in one place is so helpful because you can make quicker decisions. When you can make quicker decisions, you can actually recognize market patterns a lot faster than a lot of other people can, as well as building out a team to be able to recognize those things and work with the individuals as soon as you start seeing them either go down or as soon as they start driving things forward and they start becoming a key player. Recognizing those things is a really big deal. So if it's not on a dashboard, it's not happening. A lot of people like to say, well, the dashboard isn't telling you all of these other things, or if you're looking at a separate application, how are you 100% positive that it matches into what your Litify is showing and all of what cases are being brought in, all the different leads that you decided to turn down? How long were those phone calls? Were they wasting their time on those phone calls? Was it a 30-minute phone call on a criminal case when you don't even do anything remotely close to that? Those are important things that you want to see, right? So the biggest thing that I have for integrating and automating is, even though when you start integrating things, it's going to look really ugly to start. Don't get me wrong. Everybody has that. When you throw raw data into something, it's not going to look pretty. You're going to find some things that aren't fun for your people to see. But the next thing that you need to focus on is train your team to the dashboard. Don't cater your dashboard to the team's feelings, right? So, I can guarantee you a lot of people, when you went live on Litify, you saw a lot of holes. A lot of holes in what you're doing in your processes, a lot of holes in your intake, a lot of holes in your marketing, a lot of holes in where your pre-litigation statuses is versus making sure that you're actually working on the things that you need to be working on in litigation. Those are all things that we discovered when we went live 2 years ago. So, and we've exponentially grown since then. So, training your team to the dashboard to make sure that they don't want to see that they're doing a bad job on something. Nobody does. But it's honesty, right? So if you're honest with your team and you tell them hey, you're doing this really well, but this is something that you need to be focusing on right now because there's two sides to a lot of different things. If we have the right amount of people working on the right things all at the same time, and they're all doing it properly, that's going to save, a lot of money, because you're not paying people to be doing one-sided jobs when they need to be doing two-sided jobs. But also additionally, finding the jobs that you can pay, either lower-end people to do for data entry, things like that. You don't need to pay somebody that's making, $25 an hour or $20 an hour to be doing data entry. You can outsource that. You might be able to find a company that does something like that. You might be able to find, an offshore individual to do something like that, because you don't want to be wasting money on those things. So focus your KPIs around the things that really matter for boosting your firm's productivity and profitability. The biggest thing that I've kind of realized with my intake team, and I'll use them as an example, they like to focus on their close rate. And that's good, because we want to see what our close rate can really do, mainly because that's a really good notation to determine, okay, is this new process that we implemented, is this helping us close or is this hurting us? Is this making it difficult for them to close cases? Is this difficult for them to get somebody to sign a retainer on the dotted line when we send out an e-sign? Is this something that's slowing us down or speeding us up? Their close rate, sometimes you can find the people that try to game the system a little bit, where they don't enter a turn down intake. They spend over 4 minutes on a call and they just decide not to hit save, which is really frustrating. But we have data that proves that they're not doing that, because we can go back and listen to the call recording, and all of that lives inside of Litify. So the all-in-one solution is really the only solution that scales exponentially. Our biggest thing that we've dealt with over the course of the last year and some change is trying to make sure that we're not spending time, looking at the wrong things, looking at the things that don't matter, and trying to find the real North Star of things, which we determine down to our cost per signed case, and using that as the ultimate metric. Going from there, you then work on law of averages, which I'll get into in a little bit. But here's I guess, my biggest dashboard that I use on a daily basis, and this is This is our data live as of probably a week ago. So total intakes at the top and the marketing medium in which they came from. You can see the average numbers on, from, if it's Google Ads or if it's from YouTube or if it's from social media or if it's from a referral partner that we have. Here's the close rate I was telling you guys about. 37% is actually really low for us. But the reason why we've really determined why that's really low is because we brought in a whole bunch of new people within the course of the last month, and they still need to get some training. But that's a really good number that we can focus on is like, OK, look, we kicked them out of training, but our close rate's going down. Maybe we need to retrain them a little bit. Maybe we have certain individuals that aren't doing as well. And we can see that. So we look at our close rates on each of our intakes. We can break that down from who's at the top towards who's at the bottom, and who do we need to work on to get them back to our average of what we like to consider 40 to 45%. Right? So that's our goal is roughly 45% is like the bare minimum acceptance for us. 50% is our ideal optimum level for our KPI. And being able to build those ranges based on the data that you have in your historical value is really important. So, and you can see the signed cases that they have. You can see the intakes that they have open, as well as one of my favorite metrics that I've been able to develop solely because we integrated our marketing phone numbers was phone calls over 4 minutes that don't have an intake associated to it. So we have these automations every time that a phone call comes in, it comes into LitiFy. When it comes into LitiFy and it's over 4 minutes, we know that that's an alarm that we need to go listen to that call. What happened? Why did it go to 4 minutes and we didn't have an intake for it? Because every single rule that we have is if you have a phone number and a name, it goes in LitiFy because we can, one, remarket to them, and two, because we want to be able to follow up with them. It's a really important thing. Those are lost opportunities if we were not able to capture any of that data and they didn't hit save. So that's a big issue. Another one is our missed call rate. So how many calls are we getting on different campaigns where they're not picking up the phone? Like they haven't grabbed it, they didn't answer it, they didn't even get a chance to have a conversation with the person. That's a big issue. So that's just wasted phone calls. That means our marketing's doing what it needs to do if it's over a certain percentage. And we've determined that that percentage is about 15%, solely because that's about how many spam calls we get on Google Ads. It's about 15% down in Texas. It's kind of a mess. And another thing is looking at total phone calls. The reason why that's really important, even though a lot of people might look at that and be like, well, that's just kind of a stupid KPI. Why does total phone calls matter? Because if you genuinely take a look at your actual law of averages, how many phone calls does it take to create an intake? How many intakes does it take to sign the intake? How many intakes do we have to sign that we end up keeping throughout the entire pre-litigation process? If your law of averages deviate in those different sections, those are called handoff points that I like to talk about with my intake team. If we're failing to sign cases when we're sending enough phone calls, that's a big problem. But does it lie in the fact of the marketing targeting, or does it lie in the fact of their abilities to sign the case? And being able to have those different law of averages solely because of that integration. And I can look at this as of right now. How many phone calls have I generated in the last month? How many phone calls have I generated in the last year? What are our averages and where do we want to get to? Those are really important things for us to be able to determine. So that's one of my biggest dashboards, I guess. Leveraging your integrations and automations in a very rigorous fashion. Quoting Angel Reyes himself, his favorite word, I think, is rigorous. We like to be rigorous. So moving on. The obvious, you use them by building out dashboards. But don't just build a dashboard just for the sake of building dashboards. And you guys all know this, right? So it's not building the dashboard for trying to find out if this piece of data really matters. It's let's actually make this data matter. And if it doesn't matter, why do we even track it? So, but the beauty of LitiFy is you can actually leverage data that you didn't even think you really needed to begin with because it's still there. It's being tracked. So long as you have a key component on a field inside of LitiFy, you can do those things. So going back to this same dashboard again, and I'll go back here quick because I kind of blew through that one. My bad. But finding out your workflow's capabilities and analyzing the appropriate data. So you guys all have the same workflow. You do your marketing, phone calls come in, phone calls get handled by a sales team or by a team that you have deviated specifically to be able to answer potential new clients. And then your process goes from entering it into Litify, and then from creating it into an intake, it goes to a matter. From a matter, it then gets thrown through pre-litigation. You take it to negotiation and verification, and then you push it either into you file a lawsuit on the case, or you don't, and you try to settle it. So where in the lines of all of your workflows are things working the best, and why are they working the best? Is the next question that most people don't even try to answer. Like if they see something that's really cool and they have really good key players, how can you replicate those key players? That's a really important factor. And that goes down into understanding your team's limitations and discovering your scale cues. When you start seeing that you have team players that are struggling because they're drowning, and your numbers start dropping. So we have a higher percentage on missed phone calls. What does that tell you guys? Can anybody tell me? What is the biggest thing? If we have a higher number of dropped calls, what is the problem? Not even that. See, that is everybody's first instance. Everybody's on the phone is the problem, and we need more people to pick up the phones. Exactly. So that's a scale cue. You need to get bigger. You need to grow. That was my first instinct every time. It was like, why the hell is nobody answering my fucking phone calls that I work my ass off to drive these fucking calls in? And I apologize for my French, but I get so angry with my team sometimes because it's like, I am doing everything that I possibly can to give you guys the options to sign leads. You guys are based on a commission. You guys are doing your job, but why aren't you answering the phones? And they're like, dude, we are. Like, I'm out of breath. Like, I've been having conversation after conversation with so-and-so. And it's like, okay, so what do we need to do? We need to scale. We need to grow. That's a scale cue. When you start seeing that your closing rate drops, that means that these people don't have enough time to spend on their clients. There's a good fashion between these two separate individuals where you can have a range of like good and bad, right? There's usually a nice little hot button. If you have too high of a close rate, that means that these people are spending way too much time with qualified leads, and they're able to just sign on the dotted line, and we aren't driving enough intakes. We aren't driving enough phone calls to them, that's fine. But that also goes into the next thing, is making sure that you're recognizing that you have gamers, realists, and fade acceptors, and key players. That's one thing that I kind of failed to put, but I kind of put it in at the bottom there. But understanding what your limitations are, and where your actual key hot points are. So my favorite thing about the dashboards is being able to have that green icon right in the middle if you want it. Like, you can build the dashboard component to have that hotspot. And if we sit in that hotspot, it's kind of nice because things go really well. But the problem is once we scale marketing, we have to scale intake. Once we scale intake, we have to scale our pre-lit staff. Once we scale our pre-lit staff, we have to scale our litigation staff. But how are we going to do this in an expedited fashion? And how are we going to make sure that we don't have individuals that are doing the things we don't want them to do? How do we have individuals that aren't creating these intakes when they should be creating the intake? How do we have individuals that are just trying to boost their close rates so then that way they can get that week's bonus from Monday to Friday or whatever? It's focusing on those KPIs to make sure that they're held accountable. And then realists are the folks that I personally love the best. They're the people that actually understand those key hot points. They'll sit and be like, okay, well, I sign on average, like 45% to 50%, and that's really great, but then my drop rate at the end, when it goes into pre-litigation, is super small. And it's like, okay, that's fine. If you have a low drop rate, that's fantastic, but are you being a little too careful? Are you not signing the cases that you should be signing because you're trying to turn them down before you even do all the steps to figure out if it's a viable case or not, right? So having a person that actually closes at 50%, which is our optimal level, and has a drop rate within 15%. That's what our accepted level of drop rate, of making sure that they're being careful enough, for one, and not sending in junk that we can't help. And two, making sure that they're actually operating in an expedited fashion and not being to the point where they're, I guess it's hard to put it in, so being too slow and not wanting to actually sign cases versus being too fast and trying to send everything through is essentially the summary of that. But it's more along the lines of wanting somebody that finds that balance and finds the key ability, but you can't do that unless you have the KPIs to measure those things, right? So looking at law of averages, a lot of marketers understand law of averages. How many times have you sat inside of your Google Ads account and said, okay, how many impressions did I just drive? How many clicks did I drive from those impressions? How many clicks actually turned into calls? How many calls turned into, viable intakes? That piece of information is super helpful in order to, determine where you're failing and what you're struggling with. But being able to have that on a next dimension, which, if anybody has figured out how to put Google Ads data directly into LitiFi without having to touch it at all, please come talk to me after. I'm still working on that. I've been told by multiple people at Google that it is not possible, and I call BS. I think it's possible. We just need to find a way. But anyways, going to recognizing the patterns and leveraging those patterns, and what we kind of talked about with law of averages. The biggest idea is finding where your patterns are dropping. Being able to see how many intakes you're driving. Let me go to the next. How many intakes you're driving on certain key days. So you're able to look at how many intakes are you driving on Mondays versus how many intakes are you driving on Tuesdays versus Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. And is Saturday really worth it to have a time to even have a salesperson on call? It's finding those key patterns. If it's anecdotal, that's great, but do you actually have data to back that up? That's kind of the biggest thing. And going back, the last thing, finding growing opportunities. So when you scale, you go from being, 18 months ago, we had 2 intake people. Today, I just had our intake call, and we had over 23. And we've scaled to a level that we, once upon a time, weren't even sure was possible. Those 2 folks that I now have are now managing the other folks, and they're doing a great job. But how can I account for that if I don't have a dashboard, to see that information? Do I actually need more people? Of course. We just brought in a whole bunch of, I think, 8 or 9 people from the course of the last month, just because we have so many marketing calls that are coming in, because we've made adequate decisions based on our marketing and intake data from LitiFi. We've been able to take that information and make adequate decisions on it, and being able to actually see that has been a huge key piece in getting us to grow so fast. So I've already talked enough about this one, but finding out where people are gaming, right? So it's hard to kind of see, but we're looking at this person over here at 65% of his total percentage of cases that he brings in to signing. And the optimal level, like I said, was 50%. Anybody that typically goes higher tends to not be doing the actual processes and protocols and workflows that we've trained them to do. That means that they're not creating the actual intake. That means that they may not be, they may just be trying to be a little too careful on answering the phone. That means maybe they're not even answering the phone at all, and they're not creating enough intakes. If you see this person at the highest percentage, they should typically be in the highest percentage right above it, but they're not. The issue is with that one, that's the time where they're just not creating intakes. If they're not creating intakes, I don't have that data. If I don't have that data, I'm flying blind. There's a reason why we have these processes, and there's a reason why we have these alarms that go off that let us know, hey, this person's taking a whole crap ton of phone calls, but they're not creating intakes. Why is that? And you get to have that conversation with that person, which is not the funnest part of the job, but it is what it is. But being able to make sure that we have everybody kind of operating in the smoothest level, and I wouldn't have known that. I would have been missing data entirely without having any information if I didn't have LitiFi telling me this information that I built out. Going into the accountability features, and that's kind of what I've been touching on for the last couple of pieces, right? So the automations and the integrations surrounding client satisfaction. One of our biggest things that we've integrated in the last year has been Google reviews. We figured out how to adequately put Google reviews in real time automatically into LitiFi. So if you go and give a Google review at Race Brown Riley, mention my name. But no, I'm kidding. So once it gets put into Google My Business, it adequately goes directly into our LitiFi. Once it comes into LitiFi, our team can claim that review, and then they can make themselves the owner. And guess what? We incentivize them to do good things with their clients. If they do good things with their clients, it helps us. Why would we not incentivize them? And also, I got really tired of responding to reviews on GMB because it's not that fun. I'm not going to lie. I like doing it in LitiFi, so I built it that way too. So if I want to integrate, I'm going to do it. And if we integrate, it speeds up the process. I used to take hours responding to reviews, and I hated it. And so I built it all into LitiFi, so I just do it all in the same place, and it happens in like 10 seconds. And I can copy paste inside of a list view and send it all out, and it's good to go. But being able to expedite some of those processes so I can focus on other things is a huge key piece. But having the data surrounding these client satisfactions is like, If they're able to put it back to a matter and say, hey, this review came in, it's on me, and it came to this matter, and this person is really happy with us. I want to see that data. Why? Because then I can see who my real key winners are. Who are the people that are actually having a good conversation with these clients? Who are the people that are doing the processes that they need to do in order to determine that they're communicating with their clients properly? Because that's a big problem that a lot of us have, right? I'm sure that a bunch of you have a client contact indicator, and if you don't, come talk to me. We can have that conversation too. Being able to see how often they're contacting their clients. Are they actually contacting within the accepted parameters that we've given them for a workflow process? And KPIs and data, and like with the integration of those things, also to kind of shift gears really quick is going back to the employee honesty. Are they creating those intakes? Are they actually doing their job and not deleting the intake after they create it and find out that, oh, crap, this person's at fault and it's going to go against my close rate? Let me just delete this intake really quick. Well, one, you can take the permission set and you can delete the intake. You can take the permission set out so they can't delete the intake. However, the problem with that is we also have automations that generate missed phone call opportunities where it sends a text message to the person that we missed their phone call. It says, hey, I know you just tried contacting Reyes. We're here to help. Is there anything else that we can do? If you just want to sign our contract, here's a link. Go ahead. We do some of that stuff, and we've signed a few cases from doing those things. But sometimes those come in on those spam calls, but they need to delete those intakes. And if I spent 15% of my time trying to delete intakes, that's a big problem. I got a lot of other things to worry about. So maintaining process structure and quality through your scale. That's that information that I'm talking about with the intakes not being entered or being deleted. Making sure that you're actually making sure that they don't have access to the phone calls, so then you don't even lose that data too. Employee honesty through your scale is a big, big piece. I love my team. It's sometimes they get a little hungry and they want to be the best at certain things, which is fine. I like the hungry people. If you're a salesperson and you're not hungry, you're probably hungry actually, physically. But so making sure that you're maintaining the team properly throughout your scale is a big piece, and having those scale cues that I talked about, as well as having those honesty pieces. Are they actually creating their intakes? Or is this one campaign generating enough cases for us to consider it viable? Those kind of things. Those are big, big key pieces. And then, that goes back to holding your individuals accountable for their effort and quality. And with that, the biggest thing that I focus on is making sure that, if they are considering that they've dove into this intake and they've signed the intake, are they converting it fast enough? Or are they leaving it for a week to go sign another case? And then that person calls in a week later and they're like, hey, just wanted an update on my case. And it hasn't moved. They got sent to treatment, which is great, but they haven't heard from one of our attorneys. They haven't heard from their pre-lit paralegal. Nobody else outside of themselves knows about that case. That is a problem. We need to hold our individuals accountable and have that information to say, okay, are you getting Google reviews from your clients, or do your clients just hate talking to you? Are you able to actually convert a case as well as sign the case, as well as move forward and have the attorney talking to them as soon as possible? And then kind of building into the next thing is building, testing, measuring, diagnosing, enhancing, and retesting. Accountability helps you diagnose problems. So building KPIs to build accountability, because the first thing that we started doing when we scaled this process is let's just focus on our cost per signed case and our close rate. That's a great idea. But then we quickly realized oh wow, our close rate's super high, but we're not signing very many cases. And we started struggling with understanding why we can't. What campaigns are spending a whole ton of money and our cost per signed case was increasing. The problem is if our close rate goes up and our cost per signed case is also increasing, somebody's not doing something right. Usually if you're closing more cases on average, your cost per signed case should be dropping. But if it's not, there's a problem somewhere within your intake. And being able to have that, building that piece, testing it out to making sure that it actually works, and then measuring that information and using it to diagnose problems, and then enhancing whatever problems that you're seeing and fixing your workflow processes inside of that to help your people be able to convert cases faster. Why are they struggling to convert cases within our 24-hour rule? We want to be able to convert cases really quickly, but there is, we file suit on about 70% of our cases that we bring in. And to that fact, we have to do a lot more diligence for our litigation team, because if we don't have that information out front at the beginning, we might not get it at all down the road, or we're chasing tails trying to figure out where that information exists once it's been a filed lawsuit almost a year later. That's tough. That's really tough. So we try to collect as much information on intake as possible at the beginning, but sometimes we just can't. So we need to push it through, and that's why we have the 24-hour rule. It's because we realized that we would drop a lot of clients, or once upon a time we had people setting up claims too, which we found out was a bad idea. So once we diagnosed that issue, we brought that back and said, okay, maybe we want to hire a separate department to file claims, because they spend about 8 hours on a phone all day, spending 90% of it on hold before they can actually create the claim. So, and another thing that I will always say is embracing the never-ending journey. One of our sales folks, her name's Bianca. I've had a conversation with her almost every day once I'm driving home. So I got about a 45-minute commute every day. And we'll have conversations, and she's like, man, these new people, they're just driving me nuts. And I'm like, why are they driving you nuts? What are they doing wrong? She's like, well, first and foremost, they're saying that we might not even need to enter intake sometimes. Also, additionally, they're not doing this correctly within Doc Rio, so they're not dragging the documents to where it needs to go, and they're not renaming them, so it's making it difficult, and blah, blah, blah. And then she goes on about, or they'll say, this is a case that we can't take because they said that they had injuries, but they didn't get the insurance information at the accident, but there was a police report filed. It's like, well, we could have signed it up and got the insurance information on the police report, so we should have probably done that, But and the biggest thing is like, look, Bianca, we're doing great things. We're scaling. We're still bringing in more cases this month than we did the month before, which was bigger than the month before. As soon as we start thinking that everything is perfect, we have one foot in the grave, because that means that we're running out of things to become better. And if we're running out of things to become better, there's something wrong with us. And that's a big issue, is if our management is not focusing on the people that we need to hold accountable, that's a problem. We're not going to grow very far. We're only on a decline at that point. And if I ever say, Angel, everything's going really great, everything's fantastic, we don't need to change a thing, everybody's doing everything beautifully and we're good, I give Angel every right to fire me that day. Not kidding. So, moving on. This is our Google Reviews dashboard. So we have a Google Reviews dashboard inside of Litify, which was the main key piece of why I really wanted to be able to have this information. So we can see, individuals up there. It's really hard to see. I should have really actually made this a little bit bigger and a little bit better. But anyways, some of the first 4 folks are all at 50 Google reviews in a month. 200 Google reviews coming from 4 people is pretty fantastic, right? They're doing their job. They're focusing on talking to their clients. And when they talk to their clients, they're having good conversations, and the clients are happy to have them as their paralegal. When they're happy to have them as their paralegal, they're giving them reviews. When they get real 5-star reviews from our clients, the biggest thing is it shows that they care about their work versus people that aren't even on the list because they didn't even get a review. That's a big issue. If they're not willing to get a review for the firm that they work for, or they're not even trying, it doesn't make sense. Those are the people that you find that just don't really want to be there other than to collect a paycheck. And we're trying to do extraordinary things. In order to have extraordinary things happen, we need to have extraordinary people around us. So that's kind of a quick glimpse of that. Next thing we go through is our feedback dashboard. This is going back to the accountability piece. So we have feedback where we have individuals that set and grade the actual intake conversion process from having an intake into creating it into a matter. And then the paralegal determines, okay, did you do the data integrity process properly? Did you actually move all the files that need to be in there? Were you actually doing your due diligence to ask the client for all of our photo ID, everything else that goes along the insurance? Have you gathered as much data as you possibly have that's available to you, dependent upon when the accident happened versus when they called in? So a lot of times, we have some pretty cranky pre-lit people, so that's why we have one dashboard component, which is the average rating between what each pre-lit paralegal gives. So we have somebody up there with a 3.4. And they can be pretty picky on some things, which that's fine. We like those kind of people because they keep us honest. But we also have some people that have a 4.7 and a 5, which they're being a little too nice because they don't want people to be mad at them or anything like that. We need to have the people that are giving us the averages of 4.5. So if you're giving us good reports on good reports and bad reports on bad reports, we like you. You're doing great things, right? And then I can see that based on what the averages are for my internal individuals versus my offshore folks, my virtual assistants. Who's getting the best? Who's getting a 4.7 versus who's getting a 3.4? Where is that problem existing? And how many have they actually gotten to be able to determine if that's a valid number? Have they only gotten one and they're at a 3.4? Is that a fair assessment of that individual? No, probably not. They had one intake that got graded, whereas they've done more than one intake that they've converted. They're just new. They're learning. But being able to see that, hey, your first conversion was a 3.4, that's not that great. We need to get you up at least into like the 4.2, 4.4 range. So being able to have that data allows me to have that conversation with this person and potentially send them back to my managers for retrain. So if they need to know more about what the things that they're doing is, let's get them to do it. And let's get them moving. Let's get everything going. Because if we operate like a machine, we're going to do really, really good things. What has this done for us? At RBR, this number is actually wrong. I redid the numbers. From the moment that we took over and we started doing more scaling processes about 18 months ago-ish, something like that. Was it about 18 months? Yeah. We signed 88 cases the last month before we did the scaling process. Since then, we have grown 467%. We've signed a ton of cases, which has also in turn built our firm to be 4 times as large as what it was before, which in turn has also increased our year-over-year revenue growth of about 123%. And then, like I said, all that happened in about 17, 18 months. So these processes are going to be something that if you can implement in your firm and you can find the right KPIs, which is the biggest thing, it's going to help you grow to an exponential rate that's actually going to matter. You're going to see these big KPI data pieces, focusing on your primary areas versus what your secondary areas of expertise are based on the different departments, who's doing their job correctly and moving these things through. So then that way we get numbers like this. And we get numbers like this, right? So if we're not doing our things correctly, we don't get those numbers. If we're not adequately looking at the data every day, trying to find ways to get better, we're not going to. Wrong thing. So, stage 4, like I said, repeat. It's the constant process of identifying your KPIs, measuring and monitoring, integrating and automating, and then never stop innovating. Find the next thing that you're doing. I mean, as all of you know, especially all of you that have been on Litify for over a year, everybody said, okay, when am I done? When am I done integrating things? When am I done doing all of this technical work? You're never really going to be. But the best part about it is because the more you do, the more you find you want to do next. Once you have more things that you want to do next, you're going to find more things after that, right? We only had like a set of maybe like 4 big wish list items that we wanted to do after we went live with Litify. It took us a little while, but we did them. And as soon as that happened, we were like, crap, let's focus on these other things. Because this would be cool to build into Litify too. This would make our life easier if we did these things too. If we automated this would help this entire department by an exponential level. And going into those different things and realizing, hey, like, there's nothing that really can't be done. You just have to find a creative way to do it. And being able to determine how you're going to do that. That's a big thing. Measuring your KPIs and making sure that your KPIs stay steady as you continue to grow is a big, important process. And that's obvious to every single one of you, but I can't express that enough that you just need to keep innovating, keep changing things. Because Salesforce allows you to do those things. If you know how to navigate the entire system, or you have somebody that does, do it. See what their creativity is actually going to be able to drive for you, because that's going to turn into, that's going to turn into these things. right? If you have the creativity and you can think of these different things that can help your firm in all different aspects based on your different departments, based on your different workflows that you have, it's going to create numbers like that are going to make you guys significantly happier. It's going to make your team significantly happier because you're going to be able to give them more raises. You're going to be able to give them bonuses because that helps. That helps keep the right loyal people around. And having the data to tell you what loyal people are is a whole big difference too. So, parting summary, it's the constant cycle. Needs to literally become your best friend. I can tell you every day that I sit and I do something inside of Litify as well as I do something in Google Ads, as well as I do a lot of different things in our social media. I take a look at a lot of different things, but one of our biggest focuses is making sure that we're continuing to scale this firm, right? So the moment that we stop looking for ways to become better is the moment that you begin your decline to extinction. And you guys, when you guys all signed on at Litify and you guys all decided to, launch yourselves and get moving on it, and you're still with it after a year plus, you still have the abilities to grow at an exponential rate. We were on needles. None of this stuff would have been possible with needles because we had a horrible workflow process. And it's just a big deal to have these little pieces of information that can help you make big decisions, to help you have big numbers that you've been wanting to have for a long time. And it looks like I'm out of time. So